Hi, welcome to the Coffee with Lisa podcast. I believe that everyone in business has missing structures and endless possibilities to create new opportunities. The challenge is most don't know how to leverage the relationships for a win-win. I believe that your relationships will make the difference in the results you'll achieve, the impact you will have, and the speed in which you will make opportunities happen. I believe that you can see things through, but you often struggle to see through things. I'll make the invisible visible, the complex simple. Because of these beliefs, I created the Coffee with Lisa podcast and have invited the best experts to join me and share their experiences and knowledge with you so you can move faster and gain a competitive advantage in life and in business.
Good morning. Well, today I have a really special guest. This is somebody that I have admired for a very long time and have watched her career and her success through a mutual friend of ours named Patricia Fripp. And I'm so excited to have her here today, especially today where thought leaders are really trying to navigate through what does the speaking industry look like moving forward? How do they write a book and all these great things that are happening and some of the things that are not so great right now. So welcome, Lois. Thank you for joining us today.
Lisa, I'm happy to be here. And we both have good taste in friends, don't we?
We do. You know what? Every time I think about Patricia, I get goosebumps from the first time I ever met her, which is a number of years ago now.
But yeah, me too, about 20 for me.
Yeah, 2009 is actually when I met her. And then 2015, we started actually really working together.
Yeah.
For those of you who are tuning in, Patricia Fripp is a speech coach, Hall of Fame professional speaker. I mean, the speech coach in the industry, as far as I'm concerned. Anyways, but let's talk more about you because that's what we're here about. So Lois, tell us a little bit about yourself. Where'd you grow up? How did you end up becoming in this crazy world of the speaking industry?
Totally by accident. That's how I ended up here. Right after college, I worked in corporate sales and marketing for United States Steel Corporation in St. Louis district sales. And I left there when the daughter I was hoping to adopt arrived. And so I stayed home for a number of years. And then a friend reached out to me, knew a professional speaker was looking for somebody in sales and marketing, which was what I did in corporate. We got together through just total coincidence. And I decided to take the job working with him 10 minutes from my home. And we had a great deal of success. And suddenly people started wanting to take me out to lunch, Lisa.
That's always a great thing, isn't it?
I know.
I know about you, but I love food. So
yeah, we'll work for food. So in 1998, I decided to strike out on my own. I thought, I wonder if this could be a business for me. And before I hung my shingle, I literally sat down at my compact computer and wrote a business manual. And, I have to say I was lucky from the beginning. I got some great breaks early on in my business because I was kind of known in National Speakers Association. So I've been doing this for a little over 20 years, just working with speakers. And now I used to speak to some corporate sales teams on sales, but now I only speak to groups of professional speakers and I consult with professional speakers on growing their speaking businesses.
Yeah, absolutely. And you've wrote a couple books,
I did.
One of which I have read. And if you look, I don't know if you can tell, but many of the pages are turned.
Thank you.
I know a no-no in the book world, but I don't care. I need to get access to the information quickly.
Thank you.
So now you've been doing this for a number of years. Let's talk about your very first client. What did that, because the speaking industry has evolved in 20 years and is taking a massive pivot again, which we're going to talk a little bit more about later. But I want to talk a little bit more about your very first client. What did that look like?
Well, I'll tell you what it looked like. This was a woman who is now in the Speaker Hall of Fame. Lives perilously close to Patricia Fripp. Okay. And she hired me for the first 2-day program I had put together, Lisa, one-on-one 2-day.
Yeah.
And so I traveled, I did my 2 days that I had worked on. What do I have to share? I brought my manual, worked with her and her staff. She had 2 people on staff. And I remember going back to my hotel room after the first night and calling my husband and saying, oh my God, this could work. And at the end of the second day, she said, this was the best investment I made in my business. And that was my first client. Now, she didn't know for 2 years she was my first client, because you don't want to go in and say, hey, you're my first client. This could be a fun experiment when people are paying money. So yeah. I came home. I was
very excited. Good point, by the way, for anybody. And that applies to anything you're doing. I mean, you don't want to oversell yourself, but you definitely don't want to undersell yourself either.
Exactly. Great point. And so I came home, wondering, as most speakers do, will this ever happen again? Yeah. Will someone ever hire me again? And lo and behold, they did. And she spread the word that she thought I was good. I spread the word with her testimonial. And back then, we just had email. We didn't have social media. I feel like I'm talking about going to a client in a Conestoga wagon, with Dixie cups and a string. But I spread that testimonial all over the place, wallpapered the planet with it, and then started getting more and more business as a result of a great testimonial. And it's one of the reasons why I say testimonials really are the economic capital of your speaking practice, because they're the proof that we can do what we say we can do. And subsequently, she's hired me 3 times to do my 2-day over the last 20 years. She's a great client.
Well, and that's a great point, because 3 times over 20 years, because the world of speaking, a speaking business, it's one thing, and this is because we both have, other clients that are in the speaking industry. I work more, predominantly now with transitioning leaders out of the C-suite who have got all this knowledge, and they're a thought leader, but they're just not, nobody knows who they are.
Sure.
But having said that, it evolves. Everything evolves. So the speaking industry has evolved. So coming back, 10 years and 10 years and 10 years is really important, because what you taught 20 years ago is not what you're teaching today. Absolutely. And probably it's not going to be what you're teaching in the next 1 to 3 years.
Well, let's just say it better not be what you started originally.
Good point. Good point.
Talking about, because this is a business that does evolve. And she hired me, for example, and the why people I think hire me back again is their repositioning. They may be narrowing their focus. Yeah. They may want to speak less for more money. So repositioning, it's all about being adaptive and being able to change. And as you said, having your ear to the marketplace, so you know what people are buying and why people are buying.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's so important. And I think, I know in my experience, not speaking for yourself, but when I'm working with clients, the biggest thing, or the biggest mistake, the number one mistake that I see happen, and I'm dying to know what you think, is they want to be something to everyone.
Yeah.
If you're a customer service expert, I want to be in this vertical, and this vertical, and this vertical, and this vertical. It applies. That does not work, because you can't be something to everybody. You need to, like Patricia Fripp says, start small to think big. So what's your advice to speakers when they're starting out, or perhaps they even have a successful business, but they still have that mentality of, I want to be everything to everyone?
This is a great point you bring up. And it's a point that I bring up early on when I'm working with speakers.
Yeah.
And I can probably best make this point by sharing with you conversations that I have, particularly when I go to national meetings for National Speakers Association or Canadian Association or Professional Speakers Association. Inevitably, I'll have someone come up to me, Lisa, and they'll say, Lois, I have this great program on customer service.
It's the best in the world.
People are going to love it. And I'll say, who is going to really like that? They'll say, people who want to create a culture of customer service are going to love this. And I always look at them and I say this, okay, go call everybody and see if they're interested.
Oh, I like that. That's a good one.
And then suddenly they get a little pale. But when you are a generalist, that's the way you're viewed. You know, back in the 80s, before you and I were really involved in this industry, generalists got a lot of work. Now, I know from my experience, and you, I'm sure, do too, that the people who specialize in a target market with a specific area of expertise within a target market are the ones who make the most money, and you create a momentum for your business. So if financial services would be my target market, every time I work for a financial services business, like a bank, a credit union, a mortgage house, every time I do that, I'm creating momentum for the next financial services client to want me.
Yeah.
And they'll pay a premium because you have industry knowledge within that certain industry. So you're absolutely right. I think that this is the age of specialization when it comes to target marketing.
Yeah. And I think people really have, especially thought leaders, have a really hard time wrapping, they're the kitchen sink, so to speak, right? Well, especially business coaches, executive coaches, well, I can talk about leadership, and I can talk about customer service, and I can talk about sales, and I can talk about, profit margins and return on investments and blah, 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 blah. The problem is that you can't talk about all that.
That's right. One of the things that just as important as target marketing is targeting your expertise, narrowing your expertise. Yeah. Because here's the reality. If you're looking for somebody to help you in sales, Lisa, for your company, and I say, Lisa, I want to work with your business because I can help you in sales and time management and customer service and leadership and change management. Or I approached you and say, Lisa, I can help your company in sales. Sales is all I do. What interests you?
Absolutely. And it doesn't mean that you don't have to have acumen and expertise in the other areas. I always say this, it's more important to get your foot in the door and prove your worth and your skill and your ability in one problem that you're solving for a client, and then problem solve all the other problems afterwards. Show your acumen. I mean, that's what upsell, cross-sell, promotion, keeping client retention is all about. So how do you navigate through this craziness of experts really trying to figure out what their niche is? Like, what's your process, Lois? Because I know you're very good at this.
Well, thanks. I'll tell you what, I'm really not into telling people what their expertise is. No. They have to know that before I work with them. Two things before I work with clients. I don't write speeches, and I don't help people craft stories. That's not who you want. You don't want me for that. And you need to tell me your expertise. I can't tell you what your expertise is. But once you know your expertise and you have a speech, then you come to me and I'll help you monetize it. But I do think that is the criteria really for anybody wanting to get into this market. You need to decide what is my expertise and what is my joy in doing this, because it's a tough business. And you have to have both of those things, I think, to sustain a career.
Yeah. Well, and I believe, and I know you do too, people buy people. They don't buy products and services. They buy into people. And so you talk in the book about a positioning statement.
Yeah.
And that's really what you're referring to right now.
It is. Positioning statement is kind of the first thing that I did, Lisa. When I started my business, one of the first things that I realized, you look at a market and you say, what do they not do well? And I thought most speakers sucked at saying what they did. They just sucked at it. And so I came up with just a little thing I call a positioning statement, which is not a new term necessarily, but a positioning statement is a way of describing what you do by concept and outcome of working with you. Yeah. And it doesn't explain everything about your business. It doesn't give your background. What it says, it should be under 8 seconds. A professional communicator should be able to create interest in under 8 seconds. So this is no elevator speech, 30 seconds or 60 seconds. By the way, have you noticed how long 30 or 60 seconds is? If somebody's giving you a monologue,
it's a long time. It's a few floors in the old elevator.
There you go. Well said. And so, for example, my positioning statement for Book More Business, my company, is I work with speakers who want to book more business, make more money, and fully monetize their intellectual property.
Yeah.
When I spoke to corporate sales teams, I did it under the banner of, I called it fast forward selling. And I would say, I work with organizations that want to fast forward their selling skills so they can be more successful at what they do. And then you be quiet. You quiet yourself to hear, where does the interest coming? Where does the interest come? And notice that I never said anything about how I did, what delivery systems I used.
Yeah.
Because typically people will say, well, how do you do that? Or tell me more about that. And you'll say, I do it through my speaking, my writing, my products, my consulting, my whatever. Yeah. And then you'll hear where their interest may lie. Or you can direct a conversation to where your interest lies in making a sale. So it's really a very conceptual and outcome-oriented statement, because what we know is decision makers now in the corporate and association market buy outcomes. They don't buy topics. They're buying the outcomes that we bring to them.
Yeah, absolutely. And, learning objectives is really, another topic that you talk about in here, and something I'm extremely familiar with when it comes to online courseware and associations. Yeah. Competency matching and so forth. But I think people have and it is my experience, people have a really hard time articulating. They can tell you everything they do, but they have a hard time really narrowing down in a very short sentence what that outcome and objective is. And so although you may be a thought leader and have all this area of expertise, but if you can't tell somebody quickly what the outcome, what's the result, and how you're going to get it for them, then you're never going to be able to sell your thought leadership anywhere.
It's the hardest thing in the world, and it sounds simple.
Yeah.
But I believe it or not, this is why I make a living.
Yeah.
Because people, sometimes what I found is most of my clients are too close to it. You don't see your own business with objectivity. I don't see my own business with objectivity.
100% agree.
And that's why I hire consultants.
Yeah.
And so, but when I go to work with a speaker, I try and think like a decision maker. What is a great way to get this conversation started about what I can help you accomplish? And really be able to do so using an economy of words and an economy of time. Because I'm looking for a no as much as I'm looking for a yes. I don't want to waste anybody's time. I'm very clear about what I do. And if I can't do it, I will always say that's outside of my area of expertise, but maybe I can help you find someone who can do that for you.
Well, and that's the power of our networks, right?
Yes.
And really understanding, a lot of speakers are great speakers, but they're not great business people. And so, they'll come to me and say, look, these are the structures in my business. How do you amplify my business? How do I create new opportunities within my business? How do I grow and expand my brand?
Yeah.
Your ability to be able to really look at what they currently have and amplify it using some of these techniques, including creating and writing a book, is really important. What does that look like moving forward in the next 6 to 9 months? How's your business going to change the advice that you give?
Well, we are right now in the middle of a crazy time.
Yeah, we are.
Who could have ever predicted where the speaking industry would be in June 2020? No one.
Well, I always thought it was time for interruption in the industry. I just didn't think that would happen literally overnight. Like literally overnight in 24 hours. Interruption done.
Yeah, there was no pumping of the brakes, was there, Lisa? It was like just hit the brakes hard. No. One of the things that we know is that those of us in this industry are dependent upon the economy. We're dependent upon what's happening in the world many times. I think back to 2007. I was well into my business back then, and we in the States had an economic downfall. I mean, the economy fell through the bottom, and a lot of speakers went out of business.
Yeah.
They just couldn't, stem the tide. And then after 9/11, I remember a lot of meetings were canceled. I remember this especially because 3 days after 9/11, I had a speech in Philadelphia, and they called me and they said, you do not need to come. And I said, hey, are you still having the meeting? And they said, well, we will if you want to come. And I said, I'll come as long as there are people there. There were 3 passengers on this big American flight and 4 crew members. I will never forget this. I decided it was the safest time to fly, probably in the world. And I flew there and back almost solo. But a lot of people didn't want to have meetings because their employees didn't want to travel to any meetings. Yeah. So we've had some historic precedent here, but I think nothing like this pandemic, because this kind of is open-ended. We don't know that with time, and what does time mean, and will people be more confident after there's some kind of a vaccine? Will there be a vaccine? So, of course, I am suggesting that people appeal to their clients, because their clients' needs don't stop because of the pandemic. Their work situation and environment may change, but the inherent needs of a company or an organization are not going to change. And virtual is a way to go, just as you and I are doing today. And what you have to do is transition your business to sell the value of you virtually is the same as the value of you in person. And I think that this is absolutely key. You have to have a virtual option. And I am convinced that this industry has changed forever. There are some blessings that come out of every nightmare. And I think virtual will always be a part of our business. And I will also share that the last chapter of my book, Make Money Speaking, is a chapter that I call aftercare. And it's after you do a speech, Lisa, how can you engage with this client who's already bought into you and believes in you and it's invested in you? How can you do some more work with them? For example, and this was all done virtually. Back when I was doing sales, I would give my sales presentation, I would come home, and then I would do a follow-up. I call it a follow-up thank you call, which is also another chapter in that same book. And I would say, thanks for bringing me in. I'd love a few words of feedback, if you would. And then I would, yeah, absolutely right. And then I would say this phrase: do you think it would make sense? Which is one of my phrases that pays. Do you think it would make sense for me to work with your sales managers to make sure they're going to implement the ideas, tactics, and techniques that I discussed on the platform? Because if you do, we could do that virtually. Yeah. And I hate to say this, but I kind of fell into this. I found myself saying this one time, and many times it resulted in my making more money on the back end than I did for the speech. Yeah. So I have been an advocate for aftercare of using virtual always, but now I think you should use it in your pre-work and definitely for a program. And your challenge, quite frankly, is to let the client know that the value is in the value of your intellectual property, not the vehicle that you're using to communicate that intellectual property.
Yeah. I think
we have to be a little bit more versatile.
Well, and I think too, a lot of thought leaders are really nervous about the use of virtual. They're used to being on the platform, and I'm speaking in general. I'm not speaking for everybody, clearly, and I'm speaking on my opinion, but they're used to being at the platform live, feeding off of the energy in the audience. And this platform of virtual doesn't give you that energy. So you have to, as a speaker, find another way to feed that energy. So what is your recommendations for some of your clients and for those that are watching today?
Well, I'll tell you that I think that you're absolutely right. And you and I both know that there are some people who have been speaking for years and change doesn't come easy to them.
No, it doesn't.
Even some of the people who speak on change, Lisa.
Yeah, amazingly, but true.
But you have to show your versatility. And I'll tell you, I have chapter events lined up. I'm doing Dallas, Calgary. I just did Austin, Houston.
Let me know when you're going to Calgary. Maybe I'll come down and meet you.
I was going to go June 20th, but now it's all virtual.
Yeah.
Yep. I was supposed to be in Vancouver last month.
Yeah.
Virtual. But here's the deal. I am challenged to keep people's attention virtually. It doesn't matter whether I'm comfortable. It doesn't matter whether I like it, quite frankly. That is my obligation as a professional presenter. And sometimes it's easier, sometimes it's hard. But I'll tell you, I just did a presentation about a month ago for PSA, Professional Speakers Association, India. Now, I didn't go to Mumbai.
You didn't? No.
Mercifully, huh? I didn't go to Mumbai, but there were 10 chapters who were tuned in on Zoom. This was 5 o'clock in the morning, my time.
Yeah.
And my obligation was to keep them engaged, let them know I saw them. And I took questions from individual chapters. People would come up to the microphone, give me a question. It is our obligation to be able to do this. And so I think in virtual, the challenge is to mix it up a little bit with answering questions, doing some breakout rooms, for example, in Zoom, which I do with my chapter meetings. I do all of that. I answer questions, more situational responsiveness, quite frankly, on virtual than I do in person. Because I think it's the mixture of it all. And I'll tell you, I use PowerPoint sometimes, but lately I haven't been because the industry is changing so much. I feel like my PowerPoints from last year, Lisa, are not necessarily applicable. So I'm not going to use them. I would rather hear what is your challenge right now in this market.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's a lot of challenges. I think that, navigating just Zoom alone, like breakout rooms, I'm doing a presentation here at the end of the month of a networking event for HR professionals, and they've never had a virtual networking event before.
Wow.
And they're bringing in an expert on an HR topic specifically, but the breakout room strategies and what does that look like and how do you engage differently is no different than for a speaker.
That's
because
right.
How do you engage in those rooms that's adding value first and foremost? It's not selling initially. And then what do you do after the fact? Because I think a lot of professional speakers forget that the magic is really in the follow-up.
Oh,
and
absolutely.
I don't know how many times I've worked with somebody has no follow-up, and I'm thinking, how do you not? You just had a group of 1,000 or 10,000 or 500 or 100 people, and you have no follow-up strategy? That is insane.
What you just said is so interesting because I remember a number of years ago, and I have to say that I don't remember how many. My hair is now gray. I don't have to remember how many, Lisa. But I was doing a webinar with Fripp.
Yeah.
Actually, it wasn't a webinar. It was a teleseminar.
Yeah.
About a string and two Dixie cups. And we finished talking about what she wanted to talk about. And then she said, she always calls me Lois Book More Business Creamer. Actually, I say it better. I do her better than she does herself.
I was just going to say, I think you do better than she does herself.
Thank you. I keep telling her that.
Oh, I love it.
But she said, I want to do another teleseminar on what you think the biggest problem speakers have. So I said, well, if you want to do it, we could do it right now. And she said, great. I said, here's the deal. Ask me the question, then put your feet up and relax for a few minutes.
Yeah.
And here I think it's exactly what you just said. It's the lack of looking at the program that I just hit a home run. I just hit a home run. They loved me. What am I going to do to leverage that?
Yeah.
Too many go back to their office and say, hey, that was really great. I love doing that. I wonder if anybody will hire me to do that again. Yeah. Instead of saying, now that I just spoke for Bank of America, what other banks, credit unions, mortgage houses, lenders will be interested in knowing that Bank of America thought my program was terrific, and leveraging that specific event into more aftercare, more consulting, maybe more book sales, maybe another speech. But to me, leveraging is what we don't do well. And the magic is in that follow-up, Lisa.
Yeah.
And I think that too often we think, well, they saw us, they know what we do, they liked us, they'll call us when they want us again. And, never assume that.
Yeah, I would agree. When I'm working with clients, one of the things is I force them to think before they actually attend. Meaning that what does the blueprint actually look like in regards to, where you're speaking today? And I don't care if it's virtual or online, or you're creating a book, or you got an ebook, or, you got an online course. It doesn't really matter what that is exactly. But if you haven't determined, when I do this, then what is the cascade effect? That's what I call it. What's this, and this going to look like afterwards? And then what does that look like afterwards before you even set on stage? Number one, you're never going to give enough value, because the value comes in all the follow-up that happens afterwards, because that's what it's really about, is add value in your business. Of course, it is about making sales. We all have to make money. Who are we kidding? We're kidding ourselves if that's not the case. But what do you, when somebody writes a book, because you talk a lot about like writing a book as a leverage point in your speaking business to get more speaking. What does that look like in the next 3 to 6 months? How are people going to, because I don't know if you know this, but I'm actually writing a book with Jim Cathcart right now. Very excited.
A little known speaker, Jim Cathcart.
Just a little known speaker, Jim Cathcart. We're finalized it. It's about to go to our editor.
That's great, Lisa.
Yeah, so I'm really excited, but I'm interested in knowing personally, and then of course for the audience, what does it look like now? Because the speaking business has changed, writing has changed. What's it going to look like? How do you promote it, and how do you drive business?
You may be surprised. I'm going to say it hasn't changed that much. Here's the biggest problem I see. If I'm going in to speak to a group in person and I'm selling a book in the back of the room, I realize, and believe me, it doesn't hurt my feelings to say this, I realize that most of the time people are impulse buying. They may be into my message, maybe, oh my God, I love this, buy a book. Whereas if I'm speaking virtually and I say, I've written a couple of books, they might be helpful to your speaking practice, they might go to Amazon, they might not. They might go and look, they might put it on a wish list, they might think about it, they might not. So you have what you lose, I think, are people who are going to buy it in the moment. Yeah. So your challenge is to make sure that you're showing them the value of the intellectual property within this book and why they need it. And one of the things that I use that same phrase that pays, do you think it would make sense? Because with my client, please, because I think that one of the things that you need to do, and everybody with a great book needs to do, is sell books to everybody, not the back of the room. Sell cartons of books instead of a book at a time. That's why I don't sell a book at a time on my website. That's not the best use of my time. So I would say this to someone who brings you in to speak virtually or in person. Do you think it would make sense for everyone in the audience to be able to walk away with a reminder of my message or with the companion book to this program? Because if you do, we can make that happen at a great discount. Now, if I say that to you, Lisa, That's hard for you to go,
My credit card.
no, that makes no sense. We're going to spend thousands of dollars bringing you in, but we don't need extra information or more. No, you sound kind of dumb saying that. And I want people to think that. I want somebody to think long and hard, because bringing you in, regardless of the vehicle, is an expense. And it's not only an expense of money, it's an expense of productivity. People are away from their desks, or not away from their desk, in front of their computers and not doing the specific job they're hired for. So they are already investing in that employee in a number of ways. And if your book offers more information, you need to let people know that. And I think right now, what people who are writing a book right now need to speak to is the immediacy of the importance and immediacy of the applicability of the information in your book. So, I like my clients to be able to say, look, if you get this book, you will be able to do new and different things and be more productive in your business starting tomorrow.
Yeah.
And that's the way I feel about my books.
Yeah.
But I have to communicate that immediacy. I have to communicate that I think it makes a difference right away. And I think that anyone coming out with a book, as I said, in any way, that's something that people are buying right now. People are buying immediate solutions, behaviors that can change, giving me tactics, ideas, and techniques that I can use right away.
Well, and I always tell my clients to say, listen, people are not going to buy your products or services in you unless you can show them how you are helping them make a transformation in whatever that happens to be, whether it's culture, it could be an emotional, it could, like, whatever it happens to be, you sell transformation, period. And what I like about what I really liked about your book is the ability to really understand, okay, I'm thinking about the book. I'm thinking about, how to sell more books and how to sell more speeches. But I almost want to add to your book, Lois, by saying how to sell yourself in transformation, because when you think of a speech and you think of a book, you should also be thinking about how do you leverage that knowledge in other ways within your business, like online courses, for instance.
Yeah.
Because that's another channel for you to be able to go that's passive residual. And we all know all the wonderful things about online courses. But the great thing about it is that world is massively changing right now, too. I mean, photo identification is coming in on learning management systems. Like, there's a number of different ways to leverage that knowledge. You can gift the knowledge to somebody, which I think is extremely important. The more that you are able to gift, in fact, I believe it is an obligation and your duty as a thought leader to gift knowledge, period. If you don't, you are doing everybody and the generations to come a disservice. You're not building a legacy. You're not helping others. But what is really exciting is that you're able to really start to build building blocks in your business. And speakers really need to understand everything is building blocks and value, 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 value. How do you always contribute? How do you take a chapter, expand on your book, create another book? So when you're working with your clients, how are you asking them to adapt what they're doing currently to fit the market situation that's currently happening right now?
Well, I think much of what you said, look to leverage your skill, your expertise online. Right now is a great time to create these online courses and create platforms where people can taste your intellectual property. I always say, Lisa, that really you're not a speaker. You're in the intellectual property business.
Yeah, absolutely.
Speakers, consultants, writers, authors, we're in the intellectual property business. People are buying what we know up here.
Yeah.
And the number of ways you can repurpose that intellectual property. So a speech becomes a book, becomes 100 blog posts, becomes an online course. Yes. Yeah. How can you leverage? And this is not creating new intellectual property all the time. It's repurposing what you have, because what we know now is people like to learn in different ways.
Yeah.
Some people prefer to learn the way you and I are talking today. Some people prefer in person, and that will come again.
Yeah.
But we have to be able to deliver whatever in whatever vehicle our client chooses to buy.
Absolutely. Well, and I really, truly believe that everybody is a thought leader. Just because you're not on a platform doesn't mean that you don't have thought leadership. And it definitely doesn't mean that you don't have intellectual property. I'm going to tell you a little story. So I went last Christmas down to see Jim and Paula. So Jim Cathcart, for those of you who are listening. And I said, okay, Jim, I'm here for a day and a half. I'm all yours. Where are we going? He says, okay, we are going over to Cal Lutheran University to the retirement home. To where? I said. He's like, we're going to the retirement home. I'm like, okay. He says, listen, I've never let you astray. Come along with us. So away we went to the retirement home. And we entered into the retirement home. And for those of you who don't know, Cal Lutheran University Retirement Home is actually right across the street from Cal Lutheran University. Huh. People that actually are living in the retirement home actually get free university at Cal Lutheran. It's a combined effort. It's a very unique situation, beautiful establishments. We walk in, marble floors, beautiful carpet, great oak, it's just very pristine place. And we walk into this room, and at the front of the room is 10 people. And they're older people, like older as in wise people. And there's a lady at the front of the room, and she's talking about a book called The Village of Knowledge. And what happened was this professor knew that there was certain people that were living at Cal Lutheran University's retirement home that had this massive amount of business knowledge. In fact, the owner of Trader Joe's, the guy who invented Diaper Genie, these are people, are icons in the business world. They have all this. If there's anything I can say right now, you have intellectual property. You do not need to be a professional speaker, author, writer. You just need to have mastered a craft around a topic about a niche. And she wrote a book about and videotaped like hours and hours of series of conversations with these experts. Now, wouldn't it be very much of a disservice to our next generation had she not done that? Had people like you, Lois, have not been there, and I'm passionate about this, and helped people really understand what is their niche? How do you write a book? How do you get on stage? What does that look like? How do you amplify what you currently have as your niche? So I want to thank you for that, because that was an absolute pivotal moment in my career.
Well, thank you so much for your kind words. I appreciate it. Something else that you said, I think is extremely important for those of us in an intellectual property business like we are.
Yep.
You need to give it away in order to attract money.
Yeah.
People hire me to make money with their intellectual property. And one thing I know for sure, and believe me, there are a lot of things I don't know for sure. Ask my daughter. One thing I know for sure is you do have to give away a lot of intellectual property to get business. This is one of the reasons why I am so big on blogging.
Yeah.
A blog is like intellectual property on parade. You're showing buyers or window shoppers, but hopefully buyers, the depth of your intellectual property and the way it can apply to them. So I do think it's important to be able to share intellectual property in order to gain interest. Absolutely.
Well, and I always like to say, it's so easy nowadays to create a course on Thinkific and Kajabi and, there's so many platforms, it's ridiculous. But it is a great way to gift one piece of knowledge to somebody that they can apply it to as a free opportunity to really experience who you are and how you can accolade and help them make a transformation in their life using your expertise. Blogging, podcasting, video, it's just a whole new world out there. And anybody who, like you said, has intellectual property that's not doing some of or all of is doing themselves a disservice, but more importantly, the generations to come.
I think so. And, I think that we're obligated, as you do.
Like that. Blogs are like intellectual property on parade. Thank you, Elaine. That is so true.
Yeah, I really feel that way. And I'll tell you, my first book, which is called Book More Business, Make Money Speaking, is based upon blogs that I had written for 6 years. Now, I had to go back and revisit them because they weren't evergreen, shock upon shock. I thought this was going to be so easy, and it wasn't.
Like our clients, we're learning too, right? We're not perfect.
You better believe it. But it really is taking the blog posts, 500 to 800 words typically is what I write, and adding a story to expand upon a point that I'm trying to make the point more clear to the reader or the listener if it's an audiobook. And so I think the first thing people need to do when they hang up a shingle speaking is to start sharing their expertise. And you really are not going to share too much. I think one of the things that I hear from people who are newer in the business is, well, I don't want to give them the whole thing. Well, you know what? You're going to have to give a lot so people recognize how darn smart you are.
It's funny. I hear that as well. And here's my rebuttal to that is, do you think that Tony Robbins started his career by keeping all his secrets?
Yeah.
Like, no, Tony Robbins didn't get to be where he is today by keeping his best intellectual property a secret.
Yeah.
He gave away the best.
Yeah.
And then he expanded. Yep. Right. So I think you just have to look at some of, the icons in the world that are out there doing it and making it. And what did they do? And duplicate what they did.
Yes.
That's simple.
Yeah. I think that we all have obviously our own stories that we share, our own style. But the reality is that many of the delivery systems in our industry are going to be pretty much the same. So how are you differentiating yourself, your expertise to and within a specific market, which is kind of going back to what we were saying about target marketing, taking a specific intellectual property and sliding it into a specific target market. And that's where the sweet spot is in speaking.
Thank you, Denise. That's very kind of you. I think too, the other thing is that, Michael Bird had a great response one time. He was talking about the person of interest and how do you name your 3 beliefs and then you explain how you're different in the world. And then he was talking about objections, and somebody had asked him at this event that I was attending, well, how do you come over the objection of, don't want to buy you as a coach because I believe this coach is better. And he said very easily, what he said was this: is that person standing here in front of you right now, or am I? And I'm like, exactly. It doesn't have to be this big, elaborate thought process of what you're doing. You just have to be present in the moment.
Yeah, I agree with you. I remember in 98 and the early 2000s, one of the big things that people always said to us, Lisa, was, you've got to let me know what your uniqueness is.
Yeah.
Shh. What's your uniqueness? And I think that people make it a little bit too complicated. I'm not unique because I have gray hair and I wear black glasses and I have some prints of palm trees behind me. My uniqueness is the stories that I use to communicate ideas, tactics, and techniques that I suggest in my target market. Your uniqueness is the experience and the stories that you bring to your program. And also, relationship goes into this too. This is a relationship-driven business. As much as people might want to think that they're so smart and my smarts will carry me through, this is a relationship-driven business. I think it will always be, whether you're doing it virtually, whether you're doing it in person, however you're doing it. Yeah. But I do think that we drive what we do. Your challenge as a professional speaker is to make your salient points memorable through the use of storytelling.
Yeah. So how do you think, what's your opinion, Lois, on the meetings in the event industry? Do you think we'll get back to, clearly we're not going to get back to the way we were, but do you think we're going to get back to actually in front of audiences and in front of stages speaking anytime soon? What's the word on the street?
Well, I think that the key word there is soon.
Yeah.
And how you describe soon. Yes, this industry will be back. There's no doubt about it. I think it will be changed a little bit in that, for example, I put up a post a few weeks ago, Lisa, from Silicon Valley. Some of the big social media, like Google and Facebook and Twitter, they were announcing that their user conferences, which would have 1,000 or 2,000 people attend, they're done with that.
Yeah.
They don't even foresee bringing that back. However, they also said that they are going to have meetings. They're just going to be smaller and intimate. However you define intimacy, might be 500, 300.
Yep.
But they're going to be a bit different. And this, I think, follows on what we had coming as an industry trend before any of this happened. Before this pandemic, the industry trend for speakers was to make sure that what you are doing has some kind of engagement quality to it. And this was the challenge to a lot of keynote speakers. How do I make a keynote? How do I engage people during a keynote? And I think there are very few instances now where it's speak and deliver lecture style. People want engagement. These smaller meetings are made for engagement.
Yeah.
And it also means you'd better know your area of expertise, because you're going to be asked a lot of questions that you might not be thinking about.
I love that, Lois, because there's nothing worse than listening to somebody do a keynote for an hour. And it's great. It's fantastic. It is engaging, and it activates. It puts me on the side of my seat. And then you have a conversation afterwards and you go, what? Like, who are you? Was that the same person that was on stage? Because they don't know their topic. And there are a lot of them, and there are a lot that are really successful and then some that aren't. But I think you're absolutely right, is it's forcing experts to really understand their topic and their niche.
I think so. I think that one of the things that virtual is really good at, Lisa, is people who are asking questions. It's easier to ask a question typing into a thing and not getting up in front of a group with a microphone in front of you. Yeah. It's easier to ask a question. And I love that, because I want to know, what questions did you come in here with?
Yeah.
And because that's what I want to be talking about. Yeah. What specifically interests you. So I think virtual is really made for that. And so we have this interesting intersection in time, I think, where the engagement model meets virtual. And but yes, I do think that there will be meetings again. I think it's not going to ramp up, and I hate to say this, but until 2021.
Yeah, I agree.
But what you cannot do is sit back and wait. You have to be looking right now, because people are having concerns, challenges right now. And how can you address those virtually? I think being a good presenter virtually will only enhance your in-person.
I think so too. Yeah, because I think it's a different set of skills. And when you are virtual, you really have to work at engagement. You really have to work at how you talk and how you engage, because they're not there. You're looking at a screen, plain and simple. You're looking at the little green dot like I am, so that I'm focused on the camera and focused on you and not the person that you're actually speaking to. Yeah. But it'd be interesting. This is what I believe will happen. I, like you, don't think really anything is really going to ramp up till 2021. People are afraid. They're not sure about the second wave. There's so many unknowns. Yeah. People don't trust any of the statistics anymore out there, so they just don't trust it all. But what I do think is going to happen is it is going to explode the 1 to 50, 1 to 15 retreat, mastermind, think tank, those are really, I believe, are going to become the massive platform because it's where you get the most engagement.
I was just going to say that's a high engagement model.
Yeah.
And I think it's going to be interesting, but even when you're appealing to someone to do a virtual presentation, on the back end, offer to do mini mastermind sessions with people who were in the audience. Add value if you have to shore up your fee. There's a lot being talked about right now, Lisa, about what should we charge for virtual? Should we back off our fee? In fact, I had one of my clients said a speaker bureau who booked them for virtual asked them to do it at 50% of their published fee. And I think that's a horrible idea. I was shocked, quite frankly, at a bureau who makes their money on a percentage, for God's sakes, is saying you need to lop half off because the value
still the same
is still there and it's still relevant. What you have to do is to make sure you're communicating that well, quite frankly, whether virtual or not. Yeah. But I do think that the way we do pre-program work, I'm a big believer in pre-program questionnaires, talking to people about what's the most important thing you want to accomplish in this meeting, who's going to be in the audience, what has recently happened at your company. These are important questions. I did a sales program a number of years ago for an association in Vegas. And I sent them my pre-program questionnaire, Lisa, and one of the questions on it was, what are the big things that has happened within this organization, or has anything big happened? I can't even remember, within the last 6 months. And they said, yes. 2 months ago, 30% of our sales force was laid off. Wow. Now, how important was it that I knew that going in, and I wasn't introduced, and I didn't come out saying, whoo, we just love selling, don't we? Instead of doing that, which would have been a horrible idea, and people probably would have left in droves.
Yeah.
What was a better idea was I was able to come out by saying, I know that this is probably one of the most serious times in this company. And you're challenged to do more with less resources. You're asked to accomplish more in less time. And I'm here today to help you do just that.
Yeah.
They were with me because I said that. And because I knew what was going on, I think I had their attention. So I think pre-program work is important. Doing it virtually is even better than doing it with a questionnaire that you send in. Then I think also that follow-up thank you after call that we were talking about earlier, virtual is great for setting that up. You can set it up when they book you. Yeah. Say, 48 hours after the event, I'd love to schedule a brief call with you just to get some feedback. Then ask them we're going to ask them for their feedback. What could we have done better? That kind of thing. And then ask for referrals. And then ask, could I work with your sales managers, or do you think it would make sense for your leadership team and I to be able to get together once monthly to be able to apply what I talked about? So I think that virtual can work in a number of ways to augment what we're delivering. And we're the ones who have to make everybody comfortable doing that. Yeah. So if instead of backing off on a fee, I would rather have you overload with value.
Yeah.
Let them know you're going to do you want to do a pre-virtual with people who are going to be in the room. You want to do a follow-up, and that maybe 2 weeks after the event, I'd like to do an hour webinar on the various things that we discussed to answer any questions, ideas, objections that people might have. You would be amazed that suddenly you're more like a consultant within a speaker. The speaking box. These are the kinds of things that can shore up fee, I think, in a time when fees are all over the place, quite frankly.
Absolutely. Well, and it's proving your area of expertise. It's proving your value. The one thing that's drove me really crazy, Lois, and I don't know if this drove you crazy or not, but over the last, 6 to 8 weeks is, somebody pays, I'd say $10,000 for a mastermind, or they pay $10,000 for an online course. I'm just using that as a number, even $1,000. Then all of a sudden you look and you get in your inbox, special COVID pricing And then right now I'm just like, oh my God, here it goes. Here it goes again.
Yeah, you're right.
Special COVID pricing for you, limited time for the next 7 days for $1, for $100, for $300. I'm going to give you this, which I just charged a slew of people $10,000 for. So sorry about you. Here's a bunch of slaps on the face because I charged you $10,000, but now I'm going to give it away, or I'm going to give it for $300, instead of saying, you know what, I recognize we're having trouble, that this particular topic is a struggle for you. How about this? I'm going to still charge you $10,000, but I'm going to add this and this and this and this. Right. And then you go back to your existing clients and you say, hey, you know what? I love you guys so much, and this is what I'm doing. I'm going to give you this and this and this for free. Who do you think, when COVID is out, who's going to do business with who?
I think you're absolutely right. And, I have to tell you that I think the idea of sales, having a sale on your fees, is a terrible idea anytime.
Yeah.
I think whenever you meet fee objection, and most mere mortals do at one time or another, that's the time when you need to look into your business and say, how can I obviously communicate what I'm trying to communicate better? Or do I just need to add a little bit of something to make it happen? And, I am all for adding it. Do I need to give people books? If I give 100 people a book that costs me $2 or $3, I'm spending a couple $100 to make several thousand.
Yeah.
So you have to ask yourself, what makes sense in your business? And I think that you have to always be willing to over deliver, because that's what people remember. Yeah. Not that you just delivered what you said you would, which you absolutely should. That is a bare minimum requirement to me.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and I think the other thing too is that you have to understand that your behavior in crisis, how you act, how you behave, how you treat people, how you treat your clients, how you treat your employees, is a strong dictator for who you really are. I truly believe that. So if you are always adding value and you are generally or authentic, my mouth is not working. But if you're not being genuine to your clients and to your customers and to your relationships, it will show up during
absolutely. That. You bet it will.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it'll never go your way.
No, it won't. So having said that, is there any last pieces of advice that you'd like to give the listeners and that are here right now or that are going to be listening later?
I would just say that when everything shut down, really, and we were told to shelter in place, my sense at that time was to be of service, not selling.
Yeah.
I want you to get back into selling.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you just let that go until the fourth quarter of 2020, you're going to miss the boat, because people are making plans. It might not feel like it. Many people who plan meetings right now in corporate and the association market are in an unfamiliar environment. They're at home working. Those of us who have our own business have a home office and are lucky enough to be able to do it from home. We're used to this. They are not. And they have many distractions they might not have. So they might buy a little bit differently. It might take you a while to reach them. But now is the time to start getting back into selling and letting people know that they still have problems that they need to address, and you're here to help them do it.
Yeah. I call it the shock wave is over, right? People are, that 8-9 weeks of, oh my God, this tsunami came and hit us. And now how do we navigate through the waters to actually, put the pieces back together? That's done. It's now, we got to get back to business. Right. We got to get back to business. We got to get back to selling. I had a client of mine say, I just don't feel comfortable selling right now. And I said to him, you're a leadership expert in a very niche area. You are doing your clients and your future clients a massive disservice by not offering your expertise. This is a time when leaders need to step up. They need to understand how to do what you offer them. It's not about stepping back. It's not about, oh my God, I feel bad because I'm selling. You should feel bad that you're not.
Well, what we know is that people who are sitting still are not progressing.
Yeah.
So I want you to think about your clients, your corporate clients, your association clients, people who are not addressing anything within business right now are not moving forward. Yeah. And so I think it's on you to make sure that you are challenging them to move forward and that there is a way to do it.
Yeah.
And it might be what you and I are doing right now, Lisa. There is a way to do it. And by putting it off can only magnify the problem. Yeah. And you want to keep, one of the challenges I think about having virtual employees is keeping them engaged. So leadership speakers, how do you lead people virtually? This is going to be, this is the new future. How do you keep salespeople on task virtually?
Yeah.
You need to be able to pivot a little bit. We need to be able to pivot a little bit ourselves in order to address what's going on in the marketplace. But we also have to challenge people that by not moving, they're saying something.
Isn't that well? And you know what? In the next six to 8 weeks, we'll know who is actually doing work and who is sitting back watching Netflix. Yeah, for sure. I think, you make a good point, Lois, that I think as leaders right now are really challenged in the workforce with this work from anywhere concept, work from home. I mean, this is truly the biggest pilot project focus group imaginable from a work from anywhere, work from home, right? As my team is virtual, has been, I've always worked virtually. I've never had a open the door and here's my office.
Yep.
But there is a real need in the world right now. So if you're a leadership expert or you have thought leadership around how do you make people have a feel of a sense of belonging virtually? How do you make them feel psychologically safe? There's a lot of conversations around that right now. And so if I would share with anybody, start thinking about your niche and how do you fill those gaps and start really investigating the arena, because there's going to be new gaps. With interruption is always new opportunity.
I think one of the reasons people have meetings, besides to learn something or make some kind of progress, is to build a sense of community, a cohesive sense of community. And so challenging people to make sure that they are doing that and being able to do that virtually as well as in person, it can be a big challenge, but it's something that you are obligated to do. Absolutely. We are all obligated to do.
We're all obligated, 100%.
Yeah.
So, Lois, I always ask this one question at the end of my Coffee with Lisa podcast, and that would be, if you were to tell your 20-year-old self one piece of advice, what would that be?
Boy, that's a great question. Probably to have more faith in yourself at the beginning. I remember when I first started, I felt like I had to be everywhere all the time, constantly. And that's not a bad policy, but it can be exhausting. And look, I'm only 20 years old. And look
Well, you fit right in with all the other 20-year-olds.
Thank you. That's me. That's me. But I think have faith in yourself, have faith in what you have to offer. If you're going to convince anyone of your value, you have to have faith in yourself and your ability to communicate that. And I sure have a hell of a lot more than now than I did 20 years ago. And I wish I had a little bit more self-confidence 20 years ago than I do right now, but better late than never.
So how would you say to the 20-year-old self, how do you build your self-confidence at 20? Because it's easy to say when we're in our more mature years, but what do you say to that 20-year-old so that they know what's the path to self-confidence?
Well, I think the path to self-confidence is taking on new challenges. Mm-hmm. And one of the reasons why I love our industry, Lisa, is that I feel like we're kind of on this lifelong learning path. New things come up. Social media, when that became new, I remember looking at Twitter and thinking when it first started, I don't care where people had lunch or what they ate. But suddenly you can see that there is much more to it than that. We've got to recognize value, recognize what's a good use for your time. Boy, that's what I wish I knew a long time ago. And I am better at it now, not completely mastered it. I'll be doing it forever. But I think building self-confidence by doing and challenging yourself with new challenges, every time you meet a new challenge, you are lifting yourself up and your ability, I think, to be a meaningful presence in your industry.
I'm giggling because I 100% agree with you. I think that the young need to understand that not to listen to others, to listen to their voice inside their head. If it feels right, do it. Don't be discouraged by others. And I'm giggling at Bob because he loves how you lift your glasses up, and I love it too.
Thank you, Bob.
Oh gosh.
I only need them to see, by the way.
Yeah. Otherwise you're squinting and looking, but
that's exactly correct.
It's exactly. Well, I really appreciate you coming on today, Lois. It's, we had to do some juggling.
We really did, Lisa.
This is a bucket list for me to have you on the show. So I'm forever grateful and appreciative.
What a pleasure this is. And thanks for sticking with me and making sure we really made this happen.
You know what? We're not the queens of persistence for nothing.
Well, it's a privilege being with you and all of your listeners. And I'm a fan of yours. So thanks so much.
Thank you. I appreciate that as well. All right. Well, stay healthy. I look forward to the new things that come out of COVID when it comes to Book More Business. You can get a hold of Lois at bookmorebusiness.com and take care and God bless.
Thank you, Lisa.